The fugitive in the alley the night was quiet but not safe. Neon lights flickered above the narrow alleyways of Sector 9. One of the roughest zones in the outer colony, Cole, a human mechanic, was walking home after a long shift. His boots echoed against the damp metal floor as he moved past broken crates and piles of junk. The air smelled like oil, smoke, and something rotten. He was used to it. This part of the planet didn't care who you were, only how fast you could disappear. As he turned a corner, he heard a soft, rustling sound, like someone trying not to be heard. He stopped, eyes narrowing. Something moved behind a pile of trash. At first, he thought it might be a stray animal, maybe one of the spitter cats that lived in the alleys. But then he saw her, a girl, not human. Curled up in the shadows, her skin had a faint lavender hue, and her body was thin, too thin, like she hadn't eaten in days. Her clothes were torn, barely covering her body, and her arms were covered in cuts and bruises. Alien markings glowed faintly on her neck, scars left by control collars used by slave traders. Her eyes met his, wide and terrified, like a cornered animal. "Please," she whispered. Her voice cracked and dry. "Don't turn me in to the traitor." She tried to stand, but stumbled and fell again. "I'll give you my body. I swear, just don't take me back." Cole froze, his heart pounding. He'd heard stories about the black market, the slave rings, the auctions. But seeing this girl in front of him, so broken, so afraid, it wasn't a story anymore. It was real. She was real. He took a slow step forward, then another, careful not to scare her more. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said softly. The girl flinched, pulling herself tighter into a ball. Cole took off his long jacket and gently placed it over her shoulders. She looked at him, confused, shivering under the fabric, but didn't speak. "What's your name?" he asked, but she didn't answer. He didn't press. Instead, he knelt beside her and offered his hand. "You can come with me, just for tonight. A safe place, warm food. Then you decide what to do next." She stared at his hand like it was a weapon. Then slowly, very slowly, she reached out. Her fingers touched his, and he gently helped her to her feet. She was lighter than she looked, almost weightless. Her legs were weak, barely holding her up. So he wrapped his arm around her and guided her out of the alley. They walked in silence through the dark streets. People glanced at them, but said nothing. A human man with an alien girl was nothing new here, but something about the way she clung to him made people look twice. Cole ignored the stares and focused on getting home. His apartment was small, but clean. He led her to the couch and gently sat her down. "Wait here," he said, then went to the kitchen. He brought her a bowl of hot broth and a clean towel. She stared at both like she'd never seen kindness before. "You can shower if you want," he said, pointing to the bathroom. "No one will bother you here." She took the towel slowly, her hands shaking. Her eyes stayed on him, filled with fear and confusion. "Why?" she asked in a small voice. "Why not just take me? Everyone else does." Cole looked at her, not as a stranger, not as an alien, but as someone who had suffered too much. "Because I'm not like them," he said. "You're not a thing to be taken. You're a person." She blinked hard, her lips trembled, and she looked away. No one had ever said that to her before. She rose slowly, disappearing into the bathroom. Cole sat down on the floor, running his hands through his hair. He didn't know what he had just brought into his life, but he knew one thing: he couldn't leave her in that alley to be taken again. Suddenly, a loud bang hit the front door. He jumped up, heart racing. Someone pounded again, more forcefully this time. The girl screamed from the bathroom. Cole ran to the door and checked through the small security cam. A large man in armor stood outside one of the bounty traders, holding a photo in his hand, the same photo Cole had seen posted around the spaceport. It was her face, and now They knew where she was. Asterisk, she can't believe he didn't touch her when she woke up. The room was quiet. Soft light from the window touched the floor gently. The blanket covering her was warm, soft, and smelled clean. For a moment, she didn't move. Afraid the peace was a dream, her body remembered worse morning's cold cells. Rough hands, chains pulling her awake. But now? All she heard was the faint hum of a machine and the soft breathing of the human man. Sleeping on a chair beside the door, she sat up slowly, confused. The pain in her arms was less, bandaged with care. Her clothes had been replaced with simple, clean ones, oversized for her but warm. There were no restraints, no locks, no collars. She was free to move. She stepped out of bed and limped toward the small kitchen space. He was still asleep, head resting on the chair's back, arms crossed. She stared at him, trying to understand. Why didn't he hurt her? Take her, or sell her while she slept. She had offered herself, like always, expecting the same story again. But he had given her a blanket, not chains. He opened his eyes slowly, sensing her movement. Morning. He said with a tired smile, "You're safe." She looked away, her cheeks turning pale purple, her kind's version of a blush. "Why didn't you do anything to me?" she asked quietly, her voice trembling. "I said you could." Cole sat up straight, his smile fading. "I'm not like that," he said simply. "I don't hurt people, especially not someone who's already been hurt so much. But I offered," she whispered, still unable to understand. "That's the price to keep me hidden, right?" "No," Cole said, standing up and walking over to her slowly. "You don't have to offer your body to be safe." He reached for a cup, poured water into it, and handed it to her. "You're safe here because I choose to protect you, not because you owe me." Her hands trembled as she took the cup. Water dripped from the edge as she drank too fast, then coughed. He waited patiently. Letting her catch her breath, she looked at him again. Truly looked. This time, he wasn't rich or powerful, just kind and maybe a little foolish, but for the first time in her life, kindness didn't come with a price tag. "My name is Zyra," she said softly. He nodded. "Nice to meet you, Zyra," he replied. "I'm Cole." For a moment, silence sat between them, but it wasn't heavy anymore. It was strange, comforting. Cole walked over to a small table and tapped on a dusty tablet. The screen lit up with alerts and news, but one image made his jaw tighten. Zyra saw it to her own face, glowing red under the label. Wanted, escaped property, her. Legs grew weak, and the cup fell from her hand, shattering on the floor. "I knew it," she said, backing away. "You saw it, and now you'll turn me in." "No," Cole said firmly, walking over and picking up the broken pieces. "I already knew who you were when I found you." "Then why?" she shouted, her voice rising. "Why help me?" He turned and held her gaze. "Because no one else will," he said. "Because this world is full of people who've stopped caring. And I won't be one of them." Zyra stared at him, her chest rising and falling fast. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. She didn't know how to cry properly anymore, only how to survive. She moved to the couch and sat down, wrapping the blanket around herself like armor. Cole joined her a moment later and placed the tablet face down on the table. "I can get you off this planet," he said after a long pause. "I know people. Part of the underground rescue network." Her head snapped toward him. "Why would you risk your life for someone like me?" He looked at her, eyes calm, but serious. "Because someone has to start doing the right thing." Zyra didn't respond, not with words. Instead, she leaned back, exhausted, and pulled the blanket tighter. She didn't know if she could trust him yet, but maybe, just maybe, she wanted to try. That night, as Cole sat at his small desk, he opened a secure channel. Static buzzed. Then a voice answered. "Who is this?" "Cole Myers." He whispered, I've got a survivor. She needs extraction. Soon the voice was quiet, then replied, You're being watched, Cole. Are you sure? Cole looked over at Zyra, sleeping on the couch, her face peaceful for once. I'm sure, he said. Tell me what I need to do. Outside, down the alley. A silent figure stood under a shadowed awning. He tapped a device on his wrist, zoomed in on Cole's window, and saw her. The girl the traders were hunting. He smiled and vanished into the night. The bounty and the choice Ira sat near the small window. Wrapped in a blanket, morning light filtered through the cracked glass, warming her face. She held a hot drink in both hands, unsure if she was really allowed to relax. She watched Cole move around the apartment, fixing a machine that beeped softly. He worked in silence, calm and steady, as if everything was normal. But inside Zyra, nothing felt normal. Her eyes drifted to the table where the bounty poster lay. Her own face stared back at her cold, labeled, priced. 100,000 credits. Alive, she shivered, the number echoing in her mind that much. Money could buy freedom for someone else, or a life of luxury. If Cole turned her in, he'd be rich overnight. No more cheap food, no broken machines, no tiny apartment. And yet, he hadn't called the traders. Cole noticed her staring at the poster. He quietly walked over, picked it up, and without a word, threw it into the firebox. The flames rose and turned the paper to ash. Zyra's mouth parted slightly, unsure what to say. Why did you do that? She asked in a whisper. That's your way out. Cole leaned against the wall, folding his arms. I'm not interested in blood money, he replied. I fix machines, not destroy lives. She stared at him for a long time, then finally spoke. No one's ever thrown away that much. For me, you're not a thing to be sold, Cole said. You're a person, Zyra. Those words hit her harder than any caller ever had. She had always been called by numbers, tags, names meant to hurt. But not this, not person, suddenly. She stood and walked toward him. Her steps were unsure, her hands trembling. She looked up at him, her voice shaking. I don't know what I'm supposed to be now. He didn't say anything, just gently placed his hand on her shoulder. You don't have to decide today, he said. You just need to heal. But outside, healing would have to wait. Across town, in a dark booth inside a trader bar, a man in armor scrolled through his wrist device. He zoomed in on an image Sierra sitting in Cole's apartment window. Her location pinged green. Locked. He tapped the screen and sent the signal to his team. Target confirmed, he said into his comm. Move in tonight. Back in the apartment, Cole opened a hidden panel behind his wall. Inside were old tools, emergency rations, and a black box marked Rebel Contacts. Zero raised an eyebrow. Curious? What is that? She asked, stepping closer. An old habit, Cole said, pulling out a communicator. I used to help refugees get off-world. Before the crackdowns, you helped others like me. She said, surprised. He nodded. Not all of them made it. There was sadness in his eyes, and she could feel it. He carried pain, too. He activated the communicator. And after a pause, a voice answered. Cole, the voice said, female, sharp. It's been years. I need an extraction. Cole replied, one survivor, female, young, from the Zyrene system. There was silence on the line, then a slow breath. You know how dangerous that is now? I do, he said, looking at Zyra. That's why I'm asking, the voice replied. I'll send coordinates 2 nights from now. Old Shuttleport 14B. Understood, Cole said, and ended the call. He looked at Zyra and gave a small smile. Looks like you're leaving soon. She nodded slowly, then whispered. Are you coming with me? Cole hesitated, then shook his head. This world is my mess, he said. I need to stay and help more people like you. Zyra looked away, biting her lip. It hurt more than she expected. But she understood. That evening, Zaira helped prepare the bags, a small satchel with water, food, and warm clothing. She looked around the apartment one last time. This tiny space had become something she'd never had before. Safety. She found a marker on the table and scribbled something on the wall before they left. Cole didn't ask what it was, but when he looked later, he smiled. It said, "Thank you for giving me back my name." As night fell, Cole placed extra locks on the door and handed Zaira a small stun stick, just in case. He said. Zaira held it close, her hand tightening. She had never fought before. But if someone tried to take her now, she would not go quietly. Suddenly, lights flashed outside, and voices shouted. Cole looked out the small back window. 3 armored traders stood at the alley entrance. Weapons ready. They're early, he said under his breath, grabbing his old pistol. Zaira's heart raced as the sound of boots echoed outside the door. "Stay behind me," Cole ordered, aiming his weapon toward the entrance. A heavy knock rattled the frame, followed by a voice. "Turn over the girl and we'll let you live." Cole didn't answer, his finger steady on the trigger. Zaira stepped beside him, not behind. He glanced at her in surprise, but she didn't move. She had made her choice. If they wanted to take her, they'd have to go through both of them. The hunter's clothes in the door shook again. Harder this time. Dust fell from the ceiling, and Zaira flinched. Cole stood tall in front of her, gun in hand, his jaw tight. He looked like a man ready to fight an army with nothing but a heartbeat and a promise. Zaira had never seen anyone stand between her and danger before. Not like this. Not without expecting something in return. "We know she's in there." The voice outside growled, "Give her up, and you'll walk away with your life." Cole didn't move. He whispered to Zaira, "Get to the back exit, now." She didn't argue. Just nodded and slipped toward the small hallway that led to the supply hatch he'd shown her earlier. Cole took a breath and yelled toward the door, "She's not yours." A moment of silence. Then the door burst inward. Metal cracked, wood splintered, and the first bounty hunter stepped inside. Armed with a plasma blade, Cole fired. Hitting him in the chest, the man dropped with a loud thud, armor sparking, but more followed. 2 more barged in, and Cole ducked behind a table, shooting back. Blasts of light flew through the air, scorching the walls and shattering furniture. Zaira watched from the hallway, eyes wide, heart pounding. She wanted to run, to hide, but she couldn't leave him, not when he was fighting for her. She grabbed the stun stick Cole gave her and ran back toward the chaos. Cole saw her and shouted, "Zaira!" "No," but she didn't stop. One of the hunters aimed at Cole from the side. Zaira lunged and struck him with the stun stick. The man screamed and collapsed, twitching. Cole grabbed her arm and pulled her close. "I told you to run. I'm not leaving you," she said. Firmly. Not now, not ever. They knew it was only a matter of time before more arrived. The hunters were part of a bigger network. They never came alone. Cole and Zaira escaped through the narrow crawl space under the kitchen, dragging a backpack and weapons with them. The tunnel led to the old sewer system. Cold and wet, but hidden. Hours passed as they moved through the darkness. Zaira limped behind, her feet sore and wet, but she didn't complain. Cole glanced back often, making sure she was still with him. He admired her strength. She had been broken, used, and hunted, but she still walked beside him. They found shelter in an old storage unit beneath a rusted warehouse. Inside was nothing but broken crates and dust. Cole collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. Zaira sat across from him, watching the blood slowly drip from his arm. "You're hurt," she said, moving closer. He shrugged. "Just a graze." She tore part of her blanket and gently wrapped the wound. Hands trembling, "You could have died," she whispered, eyes filling with tears. "I didn't," he replied, smiling faintly, "because you came back." For a while, They just sat in silence. The air was still. Heavy Zaira leaned her head on his shoulder for the first time. Not because she was afraid, but because she wanted to. Later that night, Cole opened the communicator again. The woman on the line sounded tense. "You've been marked Cole," she said. "Every traitor in the system knows your face now." "Doesn't matter," he replied. "We're still on for the shuttle pickup." "Yes," she answered. "2 nights, 1 for behanger. Come quietly." Cole turned off the device and leaned his head back. He looked at Zaira, sleeping against him. She had risked her life to help him. Even after everything she'd been through, that meant more than words could say, but far away. On the rooftops of the trade district, someone else was watching. A young scout, silent and skilled, sent by the traders to track the girl. He held a scanner that beeped softly, showing Zaira's life signature still active. He smiled and whispered, "Almost got you." The next day, Cole and Zaira moved carefully through the outskirts of the city. They dressed in old clothes, faces covered in dirt and cloth. Zaira tried not to make eye contact with anyone. Her heart raced at every corner. Every footstep, every glance. She was no longer running from chains. She was running to something better, something she never thought she'd have. A home, a life of her own. They found a quiet rooftop and camped for the night under a broken solar panel. Cole looked at the stars and sighed. "I used to think the galaxy was too big to change," he said. Zaira curled up beside him, whispering, "But you changed mine." They didn't know who would find them first, friends or enemies. But they knew one thing: they would face it together. The escape plan the next morning. The sky above the colony was a dull gray. Pollution covered the stars, and drones flew overhead like vultures, searching for something lost. Cole and Zaira crouched low behind a half-broken rooftop wall. Watching the streets below, traders were everywhere now, hoverbikes, bounty vans, and armored patrols checking IDs. Posters with Zaira's face were being scanned into walls and hovering billboards. Glowing red with the word "fugitive," Zaira hugged, her knees shaking softly. "I've never seen them send this many," she whispered, "just for one runaway." "You're not just a runaway," Cole replied. "You're proof they can be beaten." He pulled out a worn map. Unfolding it across a metal crate, "This is where we are," he said, pointing to the edge of Sector 9. This, his finger moved, "is the hangar where the rescue shuttle will land. Hangar 14B, Zaira said, memorizing it. "And how do we get there without being seen?" "That's where it gets hard," he said, eyes narrowing. "They're blocking all checkpoints, scanning every face, watching every signal. But there's an old sewer access line here," he added, tapping a small X on the map. "It's not used anymore, but it connects straight to the industrial section near 14B. Zaira nodded, though her heart beat faster. She had spent too long in dark places, underground tunnels, and cages. But now this time it was for freedom, not captivity. They waited until nightfall. Cole worked on creating fake ID chips using old parts from his toolkit. He modified Zaira's biosignature, masking her as a trader's assistant. He handed her a small device the size of a coin. "Put this on your neck," he said. "It'll hide your identity, but only for a few hours." She placed it on her skin, and it clicked softly. The glow from her collar scars disappeared, and the chip buzzed gently. Cole looked at her, stunned for a moment. "Almost like you belong here." He smiled. Zaira smiled faintly. "Let's make sure I stay that way." They slipped into the alleyways, staying in shadows. Cole led the way with confidence, taking turns through old stairwells, side passages, and broken gates. Zaira followed closely, every sound making her flinch, every light making her hide her face, but she trusted him. She had never trusted anyone this deeply, and it scared her. At last, they reached the rusted sewer grate. Cole pried it open with a crowbar, and they slipped into the dark tunnel below. The smell hit instantly wet, moldy and ancient, but they kept moving. The path was narrow, the floor slippery, but it was safer than the streets above. After almost an hour of crawling, they reached the end of the tunnel. Cole pushed up a rusted metal hatch, and cool air rushed in. They were beneath the old industrial hangars, just a few blocks from the extraction point. He checked the communicator, one green light blinking slowly. "That's the shuttle signal," he said. "It's almost here." But suddenly, Zyra's chip started blinking red. Cole's eyes widened. "What's wrong?" she asked, panicking. "It's overheating. The scan mask is failing," Key said, pulling it off her neck and tossing it aside. "We have less than 15 minutes now once they scan you." "It's over." Zyra felt a wave of fear, but also something else, determination. "Then we run," she said, standing up straight. "No more hiding." They sprinted through the loading docks, ducking behind crates and equipment. Lights flashed above them, voices shouted, and heavy boots thundered closer. "Target detected." One voice roared, "Sector breach." "She's heading to the hangar." Another cried out. Cole and Zyra pushed forward, breathless, heart pounding. Blaster fire lit the air around them, sparks flying from metal walls. Cole shielded Zyra as they ran, shouting, "Left. This way." They slipped behind a moving loader, avoiding the hunter's aim. Zyra turned and threw a small charge Cole had given her. It exploded near a stack of crates, blocking the path behind them with fire and smoke. They reached the side of Hangar 1 for B. Panting, Cole checked the communicator, green light steady. The shuttle was close, but the door was locked, and the code panel was sparking, damaged from age. Cole dropped to his knees and began rewiring it with trembling hands. "Just buy me 1 minute," he said. Zyra turned, stun stick in hand. As traders appeared down the corridor, weapons drawn, she stood in front of Cole. No longer the frightened girl from the alley, she screamed, "I am not property," and charged at the nearest man. She struck him hard and dodged a blast. Cole got the door open at the same moment the shuttle landed inside with a loud whoosh. "Go," he shouted, grabbing Zyra's hand and pulling her into the hangar. The rescue crew waved them in, throwing smoke grenades behind to cover them. They climbed the ramp just as another blast hit the wall, shaking the ship. Inside, Zyra collapsed, crying but not in fear this time. She was crying because they had made it. Cole sat beside her, wounded, bruised, but alive. He took her hand and said softly, "We're not done yet, but this is the first day of your new life." Zyra looked up at him with eyes full of something rare. Not pain, not fear, but hope. Blood on the dust, the shuttle flew low, cutting through thick clouds of smoke that still hovered over the colony. Zyra sat by the window, her hands gripping the seat tightly. Below them, the streets she once feared were fading into the distance. But her heart wasn't calm. Cole sat beside her, bleeding from the shoulder, his shirt soaked in red. He leaned back with his eyes half closed, breathing shallow, but never once letting go of her hand. "We're not safe yet," the pilot said. Turning around briefly, "They hit us during takeoff. The ship's hull is damaged. We won't make it to orbit." "What does that mean?" Zyra asked, her voice trembling. "It means we have to land in the desert and wait for backup," the pilot answered. "You'll be exposed, but we'll send a beacon." The shuttle rocked again, alarms beeping louder. The pilot guided it toward the open desert outside the colony limits. Sandstorms were forming ahead, a wall of dust crawling across the horizon. Zyra looked at Cole, his eyes fluttering, face pale. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Please don't go to sleep." He gave her a weak smile. "Not going anywhere. Not until you're safe." The shuttle landed hard, skidding across the rocky ground. It came to a stop near a canyon wall. Surrounded by dunes and silence, the pilot opened the ramp and tossed out a distress beacon, planting it in the sand. "It'll take hours before anyone finds us," he said. "We have to hold this position." Zira helped Cole down the ramp and laid him under the shade of the ship. She grabbed bandages from the medical kit and tried to stop the bleeding. Cole winced, but didn't complain. "You've done this before," she said softly. "Too." "Many times," he replied with a weak chuckle. "But never for someone like you." They sat there in the heat, wind howling. Zira wiped sweat from Cole's forehead. "Why me?" she asked. "You could have saved yourself." He opened his eyes and looked at her. "Because you're worth saving," he said. "Even if you don't believe it yet." Just then, the pilot shouted from the top of the shuttle, movement in the distance. 3 vehicles coming fast. Zira stood quickly, her heart dropping. "They found us," she whispered. "Get ready," the pilot said, handing her a small rifle. "You've come this far. Now, fight for it." Zira took the weapon in both hands, her fingers trembling. She had never fired a gun before, but she had no choice now. Behind her, Cole tried to sit up, grabbing his pistol with a grunt. "I'll cover you," he said, breathing heavily. "They can't take you again." The desert wind roared louder as the 3 vehicles approached. Dust rose like smoke behind them, hiding their full numbers. Then the first shot rang out, hitting. The shuttle sighed with a loud clang. Zira ducked behind a rock, peeking out to aim. She squeezed the trigger, missed, but tried again. This time, the shot hit one of the hunters in the leg, dropping him to the sand. Another blast came from Cole's side, hitting a second one in the chest, but they were outnumbered. More hunters spilled out of the vehicles, surrounding the small ship like wolves. The pilot was hit. He fell backward, groaning. Zira screamed, rushing to his side. But he waved her off. "Protect yourself," he gasped. "Go." She turned and saw Cole collapse, his gun falling from his hand. "No," she shouted. Running to him, blood covered his arm and chest. His face was pale. "Zira," he whispered, "don't let them take you." No matter what. She looked at the rifle in her hand. Then at the hunters coming closer. Something changed in her eyes. Fear turned to fury. She stood tall, stepped into the open, and aimed. "This ends now," she said under her breath. Her first shot hit one square in the chest. Then she turned and fired again. Then again. The hunters didn't expect resistance, not from her. Not from the girl they once called weak. She moved fast, using the rocks as cover. Her body low, her aim steady. One by one, she drove them back. They began shouting, panicking. Some retreating toward their vehicles, and then she heard it. The sound of engines in the distance, rescue ships arriving. Zira kept firing until the hunters turned and ran, leaving behind their wounded. She dropped the rifle and ran back to Cole, falling to her knees beside him. "We made it," she cried, holding his face. "Cole, we made it." He opened his eyes slowly, and a smile touched his lips. "You're a fighter now," he whispered. "Told you." "You were more than what they said." Tears streamed down her cheeks as she nodded. "You didn't just give me a home," she said. "You gave me back my fire." The rescue crew landed quickly. Medics rushing to them. They lifted Cole onto a stretcher, gave Zira water, and wrapped her in a blanket. But she kept holding his hand. Even as they pulled them apart, she wouldn't let go. Not now, not ever. The home she never had. The sky above was blue. Real blue. Not the dusty fake sky of the colony. It had been weeks since the rescue, and Zira still couldn't believe it. She sat under a large tree. The leaves whispering in the wind, birds flew overhead, singing soft songs she had never heard before. This wasn't a holding cell, or a sewer tunnel, or a dark alley. This was peace. Behind her, a small wooden house stood on a green hill. White walls, wide windows, and a garden full of strange, beautiful flowers. It looked like something out of a dream, and yet it was real, and it was hers. The doctors had saved Cole. His wounds were deep, but he had fought through them, just like always. Zaira had stayed by his side the whole time, refusing to sleep. Until he opened his eyes again. And when he did, the first thing he said was, "You did it?" She smiled now, remembering his voice, his pride, his eyes. He was inside the house now, still healing, but stronger each day. Zaira stood and walked slowly toward the front door, her feet bare against the soft grass. When she opened the door, Cole was sitting on the couch, a warm drink in hand. He looked up and smiled. "You've been outside all morning," he said, "just making sure it's still real." She replied, sitting beside him. He reached out and took her hand. "It's real, Zaira, and it's yours." She looked around at the home, still not used to the feeling of safety. The walls had photos, now ones they had taken together, smiling, laughing, alive. There was even a small bedroom she had decorated herself. No chains, no locks, just soft blankets and shelves filled with things she liked. Zaira had never owned anything before, not even a name. Now she had both. "I still don't know how to live like this," she admitted, her voice quiet. "You don't have to figure it all out at once," Cole said gently, "one day at a time." There was a knock at the door, but this one didn't bring fear. Zaira opened it to find a member of the rescue network holding a small package. "For you," the woman smiled. "From the Refugee Council." Zaira opened it carefully, finding a new ID chip, official documents, and a small silver pendant engraved with her name. Zaira Alara, free citizen. She held it close to her chest, her eyes filling with tears. "Thank you," she whispered, voice shaking. The woman nodded, then walked away, leaving Zaira standing in the doorway of her new life. Later that night, Cole and Zaira sat on the back porch. Watching the stars, he pointed to one cluster above. "That one there, that's where Earth used to be, where I'm from." She looked at the stars, then at him. "I used to think stars were just holes in the ceiling of the prison," she said, "but now I see they're real." "They always were," Cole replied. "You just weren't in the right place to see them." She turned to him, eyes glowing softly in the moonlight. "You gave me everything I thought I'd never have," she said, "freedom, safety. And you?" He took her hand again, holding it gently. "You gave me something too," he said, "a reason to fight again. A reason to build, not just survive." Silence fell between them, but it was full of warmth, not fear. Zaira leaned her head on his shoulder. She no longer flinched when someone touched her. She no longer begged to be used or thrown away. She was not a thing, not a shadow, not a prisoner. She was a woman, alive, strong, and finally home. "I don't have a family," she said softly. "You do now?" Cole replied, his voice full of truth. "I never thought I'd be someone's anything," she whispered. "You're not someone's anything." He smiled. "You're someone's everything." Tears ran down her face, but they were gentle, healing, not because she was broken, but because she was finally whole. In the distance, wind carried the smell of fresh rain. Zaira stood and walked into the open field, her arms spread wide. She spun slowly, feeling the cool breeze on her face, and for the first time in her life, she laughed. Not in pain, not in fear, not in madness, but in joy. Cole stood at the porch, watching her. That girl in the alley was gone, the one who had offered her body just to survive. In her place stood a woman who had faced death and chosen to live. He walked toward her, stopping a few steps away. "You're free now, Zaira," he said. She turned to him, her voice calm. "No, Cole. I'm home, and as the stars above." Watched silently, the fugitive, the runaway, the unwanted became something far more powerful than any bounty could buy. She became loved,